All right, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this special fireside chat, Inside MAGI 2025, Real Talk and Industry Takeaways. So I'm Maree, and I'll be moderating today's session, joined by a spirited group of guests who are all on the ground at MAGI this year. But rather than recap slide decks or session summaries, this conversation is about the real takeaways, the insights, conversations, and changes that stuck with you long after the session's ended. So let's begin with a quick round of introductions. I'll start with you, Wes.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Wesley Warren. Wes is also fine. I'm Executive Director for Research Strategy and Partnerships at City of Hope. City of Hope's a comprehensive cancer center focused on translational science, basically bringing novel treatments and therapies to patients who are most in need. I support, I'm an attorney by trade, and I support research contracting across our entire system, as well as run in-house CRO and service lines. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm glad you gave me that intro because I honestly didn't know what you were doing.
I don't know what my day job is. It's really send a lot of emails, push a lot of paper, and then cry myself to sleep each night. Yeah, it's great. And always everything is too late, because wait is a 4-letter word for cancer patients. And so that's my whole job, is to anticipate, predict, and remove bureaucratic barriers. That's it. Yeah.
That's awesome. On to you, MaryAnn, another awesome person.
Oh gosh. So I'm going to try and summarize it as best as I can. I'm MaryAnn Bowman. I am the founder of ClinGrow, where I help sites with financial services, justification letters, invoicing, reconciliations, budget negotiations. On starting that, I recently started a collaborative group, which is helping independent sites get access to clinical research trials in underserved and underpopulated areas. And then I run a nonprofit volunteer group called Clinical Research Justice League, which is giving volunteers access to clinical research opportunities and job opportunities. That's me.
I don't think you run it. I've heard Mitch say that he runs it. He's Batman. So
Batman.
I'm gonna say that I think it may be up for debate who is actually the founder and head of said Justice League.
He is Batman. I'm Poison Ivy.
Okay. I love it.
Love that.
Over to you, Tina.
Yeah, no, thank you. Hard acts to follow here. So mine would be really simple. Yeah, so I'm the CEO and founder of Karuna Integrated Clinical Services. It's a niche CRO that was founded purely on the passion of getting things right. Having worked in pharma for 20 plus years and interacting and, with vendors, selecting, doing all of that, and knowing the do's and don'ts from a CRO perspective. And where we hope to stand out is to work with companies, particularly smaller biopharma companies, to build that trust relationship before a business partnership, and work with them on whatever budgets they have to move their clinical development plan forward.
Very important, very important. And lastly, I'm Maree Beare. I'm CEO of Clinials, and I was honoured to be contributing to the MAGI AI session, which was providing practical examples of AI in clinical trials. Clinials takes complex content from protocols or investigator brochures and generates content such as plain language or scientific summaries, patient information sheets, landing pages, and pre-screening forms in over 10 different languages in minutes. So on to our segments. So the first one is, what was your one takeaway from MAGI 25? It could be a topic, a theme, an observation, a conversation, something that really stayed with you.
I Go ahead, MaryAnn. You
No, go ahead. You can talk, Gina. That's
okay?
fine.
For me, I having worked with Magi in the past, and then kind of a hiatus and coming back, but truly, truly impressed me. And I attend tons of conferences. And what stood out for me is the session on moving the needle. I thought that was the most brilliant session that they had. I loved how they, broke us into the different buckets, if you will, like budgets and contracts, regulatory, cleanups. And I mean, the discussions in the room were just mind blowing about what can we do. Some even just changing the status quo of how we do clinical trials, how we work with sites. What is a sponsor's presence with a site? I mean, these are very important discussions, and yet somehow don't actually, people talk the talk, but it's nice to see how we can walk that talk. So I think that was just brilliant.
Yeah, that moving the needle was awesome, especially when it came into the main room afterwards.
Yes.
And everybody expressed their ideas. Because if you didn't know what to do in clinical research, that was like the opportunity for like so many business ideas to like come to fruition.
Absolutely.
Honestly. So I was like, oh, cool. Business number 4, 5, and 6 on my brain now.
You just call them $1 million ideas, right? Okay, this is $1 million idea. I don't know how to make it happen, but someone in this room can figure it out.
Exactly.
I should disclose that I come to MAGI every year because I'm on the steering committee. And so everything you guys say about how great it was and how energizing it was is a direct compliment to me, whether you meant it to be or not. I know, MaryAnn, it's kind of cheesy, huh? I did. I saw you roll your eyes. But the reason I originally started going to MAGI is it felt like the best conference for industry professionals across, various types of entities to come together and just talk about our day-to-day, like what we wrestle with. And I felt like kind of the big theme or my big takeaway this year was it felt a little more like a tone shift. During COVID, we all kind of got toxic, pointing a lot of fingers, blaming a lot of people, but I feel like we've come out of that stronger. And it felt like with sponsor, CRO, vendor, service provider, site, whether they're independent or, academic medical center, it feels like we're all really starting to kind of share responsibility for a lot of the challenges that are facing the industry. And I think that we're sharing responsibility for solving problems and, eliminating or shifting friction to a place where it can be addressed in a much easier and productive way. So I don't know, that's the moving the needle is always great. The like Dr. Getz is always phenomenal to hear speak. His industry perspectives are phenomenal, but just as we're walking around and talking, it really just felt like way less finger pointing and way more kind of shared solutions this year, which I appreciated.
Yeah. Totally agree.
We had a session at the end of the last day, and it was honestly, it honed in on like humanizing everybody, and not just like we come to work and it's work and research. It's really acknowledging our staff and their feelings and mental health, and I really like that MAGI was bringing that piece in, because a lot of times that's not recognized in research, and that's the most important thing. Is our mental health. And so it's really nice to start seeing it come out in the industry in small pieces. But MAGI has been one of the first conferences I've been seeing that happen at least in the clinical research industry. So that was nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we really tried that kind of to start that a couple of years ago at MAGI, just under the auspices of what would you call it, talent retention and professional development. But I think that there needs to be, I think you're right, MaryAnn, I think that we need to hold space for people to actually talk about the challenges that affect all of us. We all are faced with burnout on a daily basis. We're all faced with uncertainty in the funding environment, whether it's private capital or government funding. And so we all need to have a venue to talk about these things and understand that we're in it together, right? And every person I know, at least in clinical research, is in it because they care about the potential benefit and impact for patients and, you know, patients' loved ones, and we're all going to be touched by clinical research or medicine at some point. And so that's why we're here, but that doesn't mean that we can just sprint forever. It's a marathon. We've got to take time to breathe, and we've got to take time to like hear each other and talk through these things. So, I mean, I 100% agree. I love that we have the opportunity to do that in a venue like this, and people see that they're not alone when they're dealing with these types of struggles.
Exactly. So I think we can dig into some of those topics that you just talked about, actually. And I think they were summarized at the end in those move the needle sessions. But firstly, budgets and startup timelines were mentioned in many sessions. Do you think we're finally seeing solutions that go beyond spreadsheets and dashboards?
I mean, I still use spreadsheets. I do, honestly. But I do recommend to all the sites that I work with that they need to be utilizing a CTMS. I think it's very important because a lot of times I have sites reach out to me when they're about 6-10 studies in, and they've fallen behind on their reconciliations. They don't know what studies they're getting paid for. You know, they're getting ACHs in, and sometimes they're getting paid by check still. So you really don't have a true, like, you don't really know what's actually getting paid if you don't have a CTMS and you're managing it day to day. And I know they say, like, a lot of sites say they can't afford it, but honestly, my answer to that is, like, you can't afford not to have it.
Mm-hmm. I think
that's,
spend money, isn't it?
You got to spend money to make money on that front. You're 100% right. And I don't think it's even just independent sites. It's large systems are running just on spreadsheets. And I have heard anecdotally that many of them send like imaging orders via fax internally within their own system. There's a lot of progress to be made still in this field. Yeah,
absolutely.
And now, at least now, I will say that we have like CTMS multiple choices. Before there was only like a few, and a lot of them were out of reach financially for sites. And now there's more choices, and they're more affordable as well. So that makes me happy to see with technology, there are more choices. So that's good for sites, especially new sites or research naive sites, and you know, when what price points are very essential for them.
Yeah. What for me, and you know, you mentioned startup. That was one of the topics that myself and Mitch and Raid presented on. And I think, and MaryAnn, you can probably echo this better than I do, but I mean, from a site perspective, you know, study coordinators are overwhelmed with the number of sites, studies they have to manage. And when they have multiple platforms where they've got to log in, bad enough, you got to remember your own phone number and your social security. Now you got to remember other, you know, logins and passwords, and there's no one login and password yet in these integrated systems. The systems aren't integrated, you know, when you talk about CTMS and EDC and EHR and all of these things, and everything is a sign-on, and it's hard. It's hard for even sponsors to keep up, you know, and I just wait for the day when we can have one login for everything.
Well, I have got a hint there, and that is, and I won't go into it too much, but password managers. If anyone, everyone, I mean, with security issues the way they are, if you can start with that one thing, the password manager, you will overcome many of these complications and managing passwords that the industry talks about. And I guess that's just something quickly I'll bring to the table.
I agree with you 100% on that. That's something I implemented a long time ago. I have LastPass, and it's important too, because then if you have people maybe on your team and you need to shut it down quickly, I mean, you're talking about, you know, information that shouldn't be shared as well. And we should be writing passwords down on paper. And we should be sharing these passwords. And, you know, there's really good password managers out there that I think it's worth obviously having that manager as well. But I use LastPass. Exactly. I've been doing it. I'm a big fan of it.
One Pass, Norton, whatever. Now,
I'll say too, really quickly, Maree, I'll just say on the budgeting and startup front, I was really encouraged by some of the Innovation Challenge presenters, because it felt like they had taken, to MaryAnn's point, that CTMS is expensive. Some of these tools are very robust, but expensive. Mm-hmm. But really some of the ingenuity that they brought, and I really liked that they shared these tools in a way that kind of democratized their access, right, to everyone, whether it's a small site or a small team in a big site without support. It felt like we were all kind of coming together to try to lift one another up in these ways, and bring access. And like I said, it's just kind of democratizing these sophisticated tools that have been pretty much just for the elite AMCs in the past.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
The next thing, the regulatory landscape, particularly around ICH E6R3, was another recurring theme.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing in terms of readiness or concern, or is the industry reacting? Do they even know what to do?
I mean, I have a lot of sites that are wanting to make sure that they're prepared, but I personally, I don't have much to say on that topic. So
it's a really tough one. I mean, it's like many things in our regulatory landscape right now. It's extremely inconsistent. It's fuzzy. It's people are interpreting it different ways. There's no clear direction. And I can't speak on behalf of our site because I'm not involved in these activities, but I've heard from others that really the SOPs and the processes that they're developing to try to address these or this lack of clarity, like they just feel like they're having to over-engineer everything, and it's getting way too complicated.
Yeah.
But I mean, to that end, I don't know, it would be great if there was a way to bring industry, like internal sites and things like that, like within our industry, within our own kind of perspective, to come together to propose a standard almost, right? Because again, we're in this together, and it shouldn't be the haves and the have-nots. It should be everyone educated and informed and sharing, so that we can all be compliant and move the medicine and the treatments and therapies forward, right? And that way, maybe, right, the regulatory agencies can really respond to us instead, and they can see us taking the lead, and might help them understand what we need better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the interpretation is the challenge. That's what I'm hearing talking to folks. It's like you speak to two people, and you're getting different interpretations.
Yeah.
Of these. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, more on that later. So there's also talk of burnout and workforce fatigue, which we touched on before, especially around retention. What insights or stories stood out to you on the people side of things?
I led a session on that the last day. Again, we discussed topics like non-monetary ways to support your staff. Things like honoring certain holidays or having fun activities in the office. Like I said, humanizing people.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to mental health mattering, and it was honestly just a really good session, and having input from everybody in the audience. I want to say the audience spoke more than the actual panelists, because they just had so many suggestions, and it was a really, really good discussion.
Yeah, I'm bummed to have missed that session. I would have loved to listen on.
Yeah.
It was the very last one. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I missed it too.
But I think that's the most important piece. It's it's recognizing that everybody is a contributor in the organization, no matter where you are in the totem pole, right? And often, and I've seen this in kind of the bigger companies, not so much in the small, because when you're in a small company, the wins you celebrate, and whether it's a big or small win, everybody kind of gets to celebrate it. But in large organizations, sometimes it's, senior leadership or senior management who takes the credit for everything. And sometimes the actual doers are left stranded. And that's where retention becomes a question mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
any thoughts? Wes?
Yeah, I mean, I think speaking to others who are in leadership roles at large centers and leadership roles at pharma and big pharma and things like that, it's interesting because I don't hear the same boots on the ground concerns from them. What they have to think is big picture strategically and the impact that that's having on their operations, their infrastructure, their ability to deliver on what board or shareholders are expecting. And that's where, I mean, it's just a little disheartening to see that disconnect. I don't think that anyone means to objectify, their workforce, but at a certain point, you kind of have to in a large organization. And so I don't know. I mean, it's an ongoing conversation, right? MaryAnn and Tina, like we've got to figure out how to humanize and help people stay engaged and connect to the mission. But we also need to figure out how to make leadership see that as well, right? They see the 5-year goal, but they may not see what's happening today, boots on the ground, and how tough things can be. So I don't know. I mean, it's I don't know where we're gonna go with this, Maree, but it's a topic that we can't ignore for sure.
Yep.
For me, I conferences and I bring things. I bring words of affirmation cards. I do bedazzling. I've had a lot of conversations just as this last conference where I had a few people with like chronic pain conditions that broke down and literally were in tears crying to me after I shared my story. So I've found that by being vulnerable is not a weakness anymore. It's actually a strength. And we in leadership should do a better job about, showing those vulnerabilities. And yes, you are correct, Wes. That bigger of a corporation, the harder it is to honor those, those things. But I try.
It's tough. Yeah,
we love that too.
I mean, there's a reason it's a complicated and like consistently challenging topic to address, right? It's just the nature of what we do.
Right.
But I mean, I do think that everyone is trying, but it's just sometimes it gets lost.
Yeah,
true. Very true.
Even in an email, if you think about it, like you could be working, a lot of us work remote now. So we could be lost in translation because, you could think that the way that I write rigid sometimes. But if you see me in person, I'm very nice in person. So, I try to write with emojis and things like that because it tones down my message. But when I'm working, a lot of times I'm very I only talk to you, not only talk to you, but I only write if there's something I need. Otherwise, I'm busy on my course and getting the things that I need to be done because I have several companies and things that I have to do with multiple people. But that could be lost again, because if you don't know me, you wouldn't know that. So I think it's good to take that time sometimes to have that personal connection, maybe have a virtual meeting or, just make sure that your message is getting across, because if you didn't know that person and you actually met them, you might change your tone a little bit. And I found that, you work better with people that you like.
Exactly.
Well, and sometimes in these larger corporations, one of the things that we utilize are skip meetings, if you know those. So you go on a quarterly basis, you might meet with your leader's leader so that you understand a little bit better what their priorities are, what their personality is. And especially in like a remote workforce, it's hard to build that rapport. And I'm sure you guys, you work in business development as well. So you've probably heard the saying that you got to build a relationship before you need the relationship. That's hard to do in this environment, and we need each other, to your point, MaryAnn, all the time. Like we're asking and we're demanding, but when you haven't had a moment to breathe and to build a relationship, it gets, it just feels very transactional, and no one likes to work in that environment. So I don't know. I think you're right. I think coming back to humanizing our workforce is what we've all got to focus on.
Yep.
Agree.
Cool.
I had a manager once who had the mindset of saying everyone is welcome to the table when we were doing brainstorming sessions. And he would always say, everyone's welcome and may the best idea win.
Yeah.
And we truly did that. We actually took ideas from, everyone's idea mattered sometimes.
Yeah. Now, this is awesome. This conversation is awesome. But there was one topic at MAGI that kept coming up as well. It was AI. It wasn't the headliner, but it was everywhere. So what did you hear or see around AI that felt different this year? I mean,
so I did a presentation. I was on a panel specifically addressing emerging technologies, including AI and machine learning when it comes to contracting. And we made a conscious decision to not even create slides for this because the topic is changing so rapidly that we were worried that if we put slides in 3 weeks before the conference, they would be, they would be obsolete by the time we got there. So, I mean, one of the themes around AI is that it's changing very rapidly, right? It's always moving, and we haven't had a chance to take a beat and understand what we don't understand yet. I'll say too, I think that there's a lot less concern around AI replacing people these days, and more like we're all acknowledging that we're going to let the robots automate the things that we can hand off. We want people practicing at the top of their license and to get job satisfaction. No one gets job satisfaction out of dragging files or quadruple data entry. We're going to let the robots do that, and that's not a threat, right? That's okay. And then I think the last one, at least in my session, the thing that I learned is that we're all using AI when we're negotiating contracts, when we're negotiating budgets, when we're choosing sites, when we're choosing studies, doing feasibility, all these types of things. We're all using AI, but no one, it feels like, is being completely transparent about how they're using AI, and they're more worried about how other people are using it than they are how they are using it themselves. So like as a site, we're hyper cautious about not using AI to negotiate contracts or, suggest industry standards. But I hear in a room that, 5 big pharma use it on a daily basis to automate everything and to create initial drafts and to review and redline and compare versions. So what am I waiting for? And how do we create an environment of transparency and trust where we all utilize the tools available to us to remove the friction and get treatments to patients faster?
Yeah,
that was a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. Yeah, I'm utilizing AI, but also my concern is also what I shouldn't be utilizing AI with, and privacy and yeah. So I'm trying to follow those guidelines, because at one point I was using one of the AI recorders on meetings, and then I realized that it was sharing it publicly, and that wasn't until I went to one of the recent conferences and somebody was talking about it, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm taking that off my my meetings from now on. I forget which one of the recordings it was. It was like AI something. It's one of the popular ones, but now I only use Teams because it stays within my network. But yeah, I was like, that's great. It summarizes everything. And then I found out that I was summarizing everything and also publicly posting it. So I was like, yeah, that's not good. We can't do that. So just making sure that I'm following the right things, and everybody else is too. So yeah, it's a concern. That's my big takeaway.
Yeah. Just to first a comment to Wes. You're definitely a role model if you're saying you get your slides 3 weeks before the conference. That's a wow.
I have to be on best behavior. They'll kick me off the
steering committee, right?
But that's why I try not to make slides, because then
it's
not happening.
But all jokes aside,
so
no, yeah, me neither.
Just to piggyback on what Wes said, I think I lost my train of thought. A junior moment. We'll let that one pass.
Yeah, while you're thinking about that, Tina, that was actually in the Move the Needle session. I was sitting at a table with someone from a sponsor, and they said, with this, what I've realized is that sponsors are not enabling sites to use AI. Sites are frightened. They're skeptical. And so this person was taking this goal on. What I need to do is update our contracts so that we can enable sites to have, to allow a reasonable use of AI and put those sorts of wording in. So I think this is what was picked up as well, is that, there's not the allowance or the freedom from sponsors to sites to enable them to use AI, or they're not sure, and so they're hesitating.
That's 100% right, and it's funny you mentioned that, because it reminded me of an example that Peter Fredette shared in our session. Peter had been working with either a sponsor or IQVIA, something like that, back when cell phones were first coming around, and sponsors used to put in their contracts that sites were not allowed to use cell phones to communicate information related to the study. And think of how absurd that is today. Like, exactly. How, if we had stuck with that and our industry hadn't evolved, like what would we have gotten done in the past 30 years, right? And so we really do need to find the parameters that keep things safe, but also utilize the best parts of AI so that we can, like MAGI says, move the needle.
Yeah, exactly. Are you seeing value already in clinical trials with AI?
Yes,
I would
100%.
say so. Yeah, definitely. And just
patient screening, pre-screening activities that could take a coordinator all day on Mondays can be whipped together in a few minutes, and they can review it within an hour on any day of the week now. It's from that to automating workflows. I wish that our organization did a better job allowing Copilot, which is our preferred AI, to access my calendar and my to-do lists and things like that, because it could really help me prioritize by noon today, based on your emails and your inbox. Here's the really urgent things you need to do. And that could save me an hour in the mornings filtering out and planning my day. Again, I think we're seeing it already help people practice at the top of their license and really make information actionable for people to decide on. But there's a long way to go.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I think that we've had some awesome conversations, and thank you for your contribution. So the last one is a quick fire closing. If you could share one thing from MAGI 2025 that every clinical trials team should be thinking about today, what would it be?
Think about that.
Yeah, I can go back to our session in moving the needle and in clinical operations, and I still think we have a long way to go when it comes to breaking silos. Whether it's a large organization or small, you find yourself kind of like, okay, this is my space, clinical operations, tech ops, this is your space, and somehow sometimes that collaboration isn't there. And I think it's so important. We talk about study execution teams, core teams, all of these things that bring cross-functional folks to the table, but it only happens at the meeting, and then you go back and you still work in silos.
Yeah.
So collaboration is so important, because even with the sites that I work with, I mean, if the nurse or coordinator is seeing patients and the person in finance is negotiating the budget, but they don't know what's actually happening on the visit, well, there's a huge disconnect there, because you don't have certain things that are in the budget, and then they're doing things that are not supposed to be done on the visit, and they're not getting paid for it. So just having that conversation, which takes 10 minutes, could earn your site money that they're losing on the table. So collaboration is key to any site and any relationship that you have between sites and sponsors, and making sure that you're compensated for the time that you're doing with studies. I agree with you. Collaboration is key. And saying it, but actually doing it.
And
I'm so passionate about that. When you said it, I was like, collaboration.
You touched a point, because I also spoke about, it's important because sponsors sometimes leave it to the CROs to have that front facing with the sites. And they don't think of the importance of being present at SIVs. Investigator meetings sometimes is such a dog and pony show in a way, but it's so important that the sponsors get involved. That collaboration with the site just shows how vested you are in this research and how you appreciate the sites for what they do.
Again, it's the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Humanizing people, having a relationship. I mean, you want to build your pipeline, you want to have studies. Well, then you need to have a relationship with the people that you're working with. Exactly. Yeah. So it's all about collaboration and real collaboration, not just, hey, we're collaborating, but you're really not collaborating.
And
if I follow along that theme and you want just a quick one-liner, it's to, let's see, I think we should all be collaborating to move points of friction upstream so that we're not hit with surprises